I bought this Land Rover 90 at auction, as you can see from the COPART number on it. It's a Cat S structural damage, and I'm going to very briefly show you what's wrong with it. There's some things which are absolutely obvious, of course. It's had a bump on this front corner, and this is the point of impact. There's no doubt about that. And I reckon it was probably a fence post or something like that. Obviously quite tall, not too wide because it didn't touch the bonnet, but the bonnet was jammed. As you can see, the bonnet pin, maybe you can see, and the hole don't line up. I had to open the bonnet, I had to take the grill off and undo these two little bolts here from underneath, a spanner on top and a socket underneath, so I could release the whole lock mechanism. Don't tell anyone, that's how you open the bonnet on a locked Land Rover Defender. So you look at this and you think, okay, well, you know, you go by the photographs on COPART and you think that's not going to be too bad. Cat S, yeah, it's structural, but it's not that bad, surely. Because of the damage to the bumper here, yeah, obviously this has taken quite a hit to fold it back there, but it's tweaked the end of the chassis rails, so they've been pushed that way, and because they're tied together by the bumper, which you can see has got a ripple here and a ripple here, and they're tied together by the cross member there, and I don't know if you can see that down there, that's a kink in the metal there. And if we come over this side, I might be able to show you, it's actually torn the weld down there. So you look at those, and obviously the COPART photographs don't really tell the whole story. This is more or less what you're seeing now is more or less the picture that I was looking at on COPART, and it's the only picture that really showed the damage, and it's only showing what's happening on the surface. So we go a bit deeper and we see, yeah, okay, so this is bent and that's bent, and actually if you stand back here you can see that the line of the grille there and there, you know, this front panel here, that chassis rail is moved over that way and that chassis rail is moved over that way. So the whole front of the car has moved over towards the driver's side. Okay, so maybe it's just going to need like that section. You can buy that section of the chassis, you can cut off just in front of the engine mounts and replace just that piece. And that would be fine. And I kind of had in mind when I bought this car that that's where I was going to be going with it. However, let's look a little bit closer. The first thing we might do, I think it might be quite hard to see, but if you follow the line of the car down there, that should be a straight line, and this whole corner here is pushed in as well. Now that might be just because it's kinked it here and this bend here has pulled this in. Yeah, maybe, but maybe not. It's sprung out here. There's a step there. You can see that. Passenger side door fit. It's okay. It's up to Land Rover standards. It's still parallel along the bottom. This gap here is more or less consistent. Maybe a little bit tight at the bottom, but no problems. Okay, let's have a look at the general state of the thing. I noticed, looking underneath the chassis here, this has had some welding. This is a 2001 TD5. Okay, so it's nearly 25 years old. There's been some welding there. You might not be able to see it, but there's been some welding under there as well. Back door fit is okay. I'm not going to show you the registration of this car because it's, although it is mine, it's not fair on the original owner. This is interesting. You see this? That's rubber and it's got paint on it. So this corner has been painted. When they painted it, they didn't even bother taking the rubber off the door, which is a bit naughty, isn't it? Rear cross member looks to be in very good condition. Maybe it's been replaced. Very sharp edges, very clean. However, that's not going to help us because I've parked it a bit close to the fence. But look at that. This is a driver's door, the gap to the B post. That is a problem, and in fact that door doesn't open. It's completely jammed against the B post, and I'll show you what's happened inside because that might help illustrate further what's happened. It's a nice tidy car inside, a bit grubby, but it is a Land Rover 90. Look at that B post, all kinked and bent. We're going to have to do some work to get that door open. But what's that tell us about the overall state of the car? Well, I think it's fair to say that the fact that that door won't open and it's been pressed against the B post means that that impact on the front near side corner, which has pushed the chassis rails across, has also pushed the bulkhead back on the driver's side, and the bulkhead which the door is bolted to is pushing back into that B post. So as I say, this is a Cat S. It's a structurally damaged, written off by the insurance company because of the structural damage. And I think I'd agree with the insurance company on that one. The argument about write-off is an interesting one. You know, do you write it off or don't you? Well, they'd have looked at the cost of putting this car back to how it should be as if it was new. The car's going to need the obvious external parts of a new near side front wing and the trim panel that goes behind the lights and the indicators and the headlights and the inner panels, maybe the maybe the inner wheel arch as well. It's going to need a complete body off the chassis. It's going to need a new chassis because this one is beyond repair. I know with monocoque cars you can stick them on an alignment jig, you can pull them and push them and heat them and bend them and things like that. And to some extent that's true even with this separate body chassis arrangement that the Land Rover has here. But because it's had welded repairs, that rust will be all the way through it, and as soon as you start pulling it, you're just going to tear open more pieces. It would still need a new front end on it, so you're going to have to chop off the front chassis legs in front of the engine mounts, get the new part of that, take the body off the car, put the rolling chassis on an alignment jig, pull those chassis rails across to where they should be, weld the new front end onto it if you can find enough metal to weld it to, and the end result of that is going to be very second-rate repair. The insurance company won't be pleased with that, and actually the amount of work required to do that over simply replacing the chassis is probably about the same, because you've got labour, and labour for most repair places is going to be £100 an hour. So typical chassis replacement is maybe 40 hours, £4,000 of labour, £4,000 chassis, a wing and all of those parts, maybe another £600, because they're not going to fit an aftermarket one. Insurers and their repairers are almost obliged to repair with new factory parts, OE parts. And it's unusual for them to agree to do a repair with pattern parts or salvaged or anything like that. So I don't expect they even considered that. £4,000 chassis, £4,000 labour, £600, let's call it, for a wing and some lights and bits and pieces. And then probably the same again for paint, and that's assuming they don't find anything else wrong when they're swapping chassis. So if you've got parts that break or fall apart in your hand, and at 25 years old that's quite possible, it depends on how well maintained this vehicle's been. It's very easy to see how that bill could reach £10,000 for the repair to this car if it went into a body shop for that job. And realistically, if this car was really clean and everything worked on it and it was sat on a new chassis, this car's worth maybe £18,000. Before the accident, sitting on its original chassis in its slightly tatty state that it's in, it's probably worth maybe 12 to 15. So a £10,000 bill for repair, it's quite easy to see why it would have been written off. And I don't blame the insurance company for taking that move. The insurance company needs to look at the balance of cost. Let's say the repair was £4,000. They'd have just said, go ahead, because that would be their entire bill. In fact, it would be less than that because of your insurance excess. So they'd have probably paid £3,500 for it, including the VAT, and they'd claim the VAT back, so 2.5. And that would be their entire cost of repairing this car. But when they're presented with a £10,000 repair on, let's be generous and say it's a £15,000 car, they'll say, okay, no, that's not going to work for us. We'll pay out the £15,000 to the original owner, and then we'll put the car into a salvage auction where mugs like me buy it. And I'll be honest with you, I paid £6,500 for this. I didn't think it was quite as badly damaged as it is. And my labour is effectively free because I'm doing this for whatever margin I can get on it. But the cost of repair parts has gone from maybe £2,000 to £5,000. So any margin I make on this will be slim. However, maybe it won't be. This is a nice car. All the body panels are good, apart from the one corner, which has got to be repaired. It's a very desirable vehicle. It's a good age. It's a TD5, which is the sweet engine for these if you're going to do stock. Very tunable as well. You can do a lot with it. If I put a new Marsland chassis underneath this and rebuild it onto that, and not take my time, but make sure I repair and replace all the parts that I transfer, not just unbolt it from one and bolt it onto the other regardless of condition, but actually check everything and make sure everything's sweet as it goes into the new chassis. And then we do a new alignment of the whole bodywork onto the new chassis, give it a really nice tidy up, It's going to need a new front bumper, so maybe we'll put a nice tubular winch bumper on the front of it. We'll do something nice on the back of it. It's already sitting on some nice wheels and tyres, although the tyres are a little bit tired, but yeah, we'll worry about later. I think this car might achieve the 18,000, or certainly more than 15. And so if my cost so far is 6.5, and that's not even strictly true because it's 6.5 plus my time and fuel to go and collect it and the auction house fees, so it's actually a bit over 7,500 at the end of the day. So let's call it 7,500. I can buy a new front wing which isn't new, and that might be 100 quid. I can spend 300 or 400 quid on paint, and I've found a new old stock Marsland chassis to go on this, which will be about 3,200. So we're on 7.5 plus 3.2 is 10.7. Plus a wing, 10.8, 10.9 with some lights, 11,000, and some paint, 12,000, bumpers. I think for less than 13,000 I can turn this into a very nice, very good car and still make a little bit of profit on it. That's what I hope to do. But also I hope that you can see from the insurance company's point of view why this was a category S write-off for what looks like a fairly trivial bump on the front corner. Let's see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Love ya. See you soon.